Republican lawmakers are pushing ahead with their criticism of the Justice Department for the Hunter Biden plea deal, while a well-known Democratic senator, well, he's still flirting with the idea of a presidential run. Which lane, we don't know yet. We'll get to all that in a moment, along with the politics at the state level, almost 1 year after the Dobbs decision. But first, top House GOP leaders and lawmakers say Tuesday's plea agreement with Hunter Biden shows what they describe as a two-tiered system of justice in this country. This as they continue investigating the president's son. Lawmakers are divided by party about whether or not this plea agreement was in fact fair.
I don't know who the judge is in this case, but I tend to just trust our justice system to get it right.
If they had this evidence on the Trump family, on President Trump's children, you would already see them locked up in jail.
I think the Biden administration did the right thing in choosing a prosecutor who was chosen by the Trump administration and giving them free rein to investigate the Hunter Biden situation.
I spoke with a panel of reporters about this and another famous Democrat named Joe earlier today. Ed O'Keefe, as you well know, CBS News' senior White House and political correspondent. Olivia Beavers is a congressional reporter for Politico, and Liz Landers is a political correspondent. Olivia, let me start with you. On the Hill this week, two topics, well, many topics, but two I want to talk to you about. Republican reaction to Hunter Biden's plea deal and the Durham testimony before the Judiciary Committee on what he found, the implications thereof, and also, not incidentally, Republican reaction to that.
I think what you're seeing with both of those cases, Republicans feel like they didn't take it far enough. With Hunter Biden, James Comer, the oversight chairman, came out calling it a sweetheart deal. My colleague reported, and he basically said this was supposed to be a comprehensive resolution in terms of the federal government's investigation into Hunter Biden's legal liabilities. House Republicans are not going to take that. They want to be looking at his businesses with foreign entities. They're going to be calling in Devin Archer within the next couple of days, who was his former business partner, and they're hoping to get more information from him on that. And I know that James Comer and Jim Jordan, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, spoke last night, and they're trying to decide whether to move forward with contempt against FBI Director Wray, because they're frustrated about the documents that they've been trying to push and saying that the one that they got yesterday was too redacted and not really what they were hoping to review. So they're pushing forward on that. As for Mr. Durham, the special counsel who is looking into the government's investigation into Russia, he did 3 different prosecutions and only one landed. And Republicans feel like it took too long. It didn't go hard enough in whacking. And so I think that you're going to see some frustrations boiling up again with Republicans.
Ed O'Keefe, I'm sure the White House has a perspective on both, but particularly Hunter Biden.
Publicly, it's not to say much of anything at all. I'm very proud of my son, were the 6 words muttered by the president about this, and that's about all we're going to get from him until he's cornered by a reporter on it at some point again, if at all. The White House understands it's a personal, a family matter, not only a 5-year legal ordeal that may or may not be over. There may be other legal matters that we just don't know about quite yet. There is an issue also, frankly, with Hunter's I guess, for lack of a better term, love child, frankly, with a woman in Arkansas that the Biden family hasn't recognized, is yet to be settled as well. So that one remains out there as well. And it all speaks to the personal issues that Hunter has faced, that the president is especially sensitive to, as any parent would be for their child. So that's the way the White House treats this. As for what the Republicans are doing, the White House attitude is, if you really want to go down that path and continue spending taxpayer money and your time on issues related to that, you go right ahead, because there are plenty of other things Congress could be focused on that the Oversight and Judiciary Committees, at least, are continuing to refuse to focus on.
And Liz, as I was able to monitor House and Senate Democratic reaction yesterday to the Hunter Biden plea deal, such as there was, one thing kept phraseology popping up. Trump appointed U.S. attorney. Trump appointed U.S. attorney. And then there would be whatever the reaction was. That seems to be the first card that Democrats want to play on this.
Right. I think you saw someone like Congressman Jamie Raskin say that this deal that was brought forward shows that there is no favor because Hunter Biden has pleaded guilty to this now. I think Democrats are leaning into the fact that this was a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney there in Delaware, and also making the point that President Biden, when he came into office, could have replaced that U.S. attorney there in Delaware. He did not do that. I think we also saw today the Attorney General Merrick Garland speak to this. I think he was asked about this at an international forum that he was speaking at, and he said that he has let that U.S. attorney also do his work there. I think the Biden White House and the administration is being so careful to not interject in this. And actually, I spoke to a Biden campaign official yesterday who said that they don't want to comment about this, basically because they don't, because this is not in Joe Biden's nature to comment on ongoing investigations and to comment on things that the Department of Justice is doing.
And anyone who has a political reporter's notebook in this town knows there is, among many evergreen stories, the Joe Manchin story. What's on the mind of Senator Joe Manchin? What are Senator Joe Manchin's intentions? That was a regular story all through all the conversations and negotiations over the Biden legislative agenda. Now it is in a slightly different, highly more political realm. Is he going to run for president as a third-party candidate? Is he going to run for re-election? Ed, I understand you've had some conversations in this sphere. What can you tell us?
He's not ruling anything out yet.
Oh,
and as
imagine
cliche,
that.
but as cliche as that is, the guidance on that is, to me at least, has changed a little bit in that he legitimately is keeping every potential option open. Running for re-election in a state where polling, as unreliable as it may be this early on, suggests he's trailing whichever Republican opponent he faces. He's been there before. Is this time any different? We'll wait and see, and it'll depend in part on how popular the president is. Don't run for re-election and go become something like the president of West Virginia University, or run for president. But run for president as a third-party or independent candidate or as the face of this no-labels movement that has been sort of stalking Democrats and Republicans, not only here in Washington but across the country, threatening to put together a 50-state strategy. With tens of millions of dollars of donations already in the bank. And a bunch of consultants who've done this before but never done it quite successfully, and so they're looking for something to do. That is the third option that is most alluring, perhaps, to him and his world, but also the most threatening, of course, to Democrats and Republicans. One thing he's never been asked, if he's so interested in running for president, why not just challenge Joe Biden? Especially at a time when Robert Kennedy Jr. is pulling what? Somewhere between 20 to 40% in some polls? Why not just go after him if you're so interested in it? I think what he's most interested in is ensuring that people like us continue talking about him as often as possible, because then he immediately becomes a factor in whatever big issue is before the Senate at the time. So it'll be permitting reform potentially later this year, the appropriations process, the defense bill. It allows him to weigh in because he's going to be a needed vote. And that's what any senator wants, to be in the middle of it.
I would also just add that I think that Manchin is sort of tapping into something more broadly in this conversation as we go into 2024, which is if the candidates are President Joe Biden with a rematch against former President Donald Trump, people don't want that. I talk to a lot of voters. I'm sure you guys hear this when you're traveling around, too. People are really tired of this idea that it's going to be the same two guys again. So I think that Manchin probably hears that in West Virginia from his supporters who probably do want him to run for president, maybe some against Biden, but some probably just in this more centrist middle lane that Manchin could potentially occupy. I just see, like, the last 2.5 years, it's sort of been a conversation of which Joe is president in D.C., Joe Manchin or Joe Biden, and he is kind of keeping this conversation going right now.
Olivia?
Well, with Manchin, his last re-election was tough. He had won by 3 points, and we think that this might be his toughest one. We call it the Manchin meter, trying to detect where he is on things, and he never misses an opportunity to try to leave us guessing because, like Ed said, we will keep talking about him, and he might also, his colleagues don't want him to leave because they fear that if he leaves that Senate seat, it's going to flip red, and that Republicans only need to flip one seat to win the Senate in the upcoming election. So they're trying to encourage him to stay, and that might give him more leverage as he sort of weighs as will I, won't I, and pushing the agenda items that he wants to pass and saying, well, you know what could make me stay? This, that.
Liz Landers, Olivia Beaver, Ed O'Keefe, we thank you so very much.